Hey gang, and welcome back. These videos are brought to you by Card Conduit, the best place to sell your unused collection fast and easily. 401 Games, Canada's top shop for all your hobby and TCG needs. Dragon Shield, the strongest sleeves for your strongest decks. Moxfield, the easiest way to store and share your deck lists. And Foil Armor, flatten your foils fast. Archer wins the die roll and starts us off. He draws and plays a tapped Temple of Triumph, scrying 1. Metch's turn has him playing a tapped Smoldering Marsh. Max has an Inspiring Vantage coming in as his land drop, and he casts that sweet turn 1 Soul Ring. Will just plays a tapped Isolated Chapel. Arja draws and bolts himself by playing a Windswept Heath and cracking it to find a Shock. He shortcuts, playing an Arcane Signet first, and then goes to find his land. Metch has a similar turn, playing and cracking a Scalding Tarn. Instead though, he finds a tapped Elegant Parlor and surveils 1. Max has a Swamp, and fully admits to being a bad person as he casts Smothering Tithe on turn 2. Will draws, and Max gets a treasure. Will then plays a Battlefield Forge and casts an Orzhov Signet. Arja doesn't pay his taxes and drops a Mountain, and then escalates the game to DEFCON 1 by tapping out for his own Smothering Tithe. Metcha draws with Max and Arja getting their treasures. He plays a Castle Embrith, and then brings out his Zurgo in the main phase. Max lets Arja get his treasure, and plays a Sundown Pass for turn. He then taps enough for Neriv, and makes him 2 Goblin tokens. He ships the turn after that. Will untaps, and draws, and activates his Signet as he draws to pay for Max's tax after Arja says he'll deal with Neriv. Arja then gets the treasure, and Will plays out a Mountain for turn. He follows up with Jadar, and passes, making a zombie token with Decay on his end step. Also during the end step, Arja uses Swords to Plowshares to exile Max's Neriv, which gains Max 4. Max gets his own treasure from Arja drawing, and Arja then taps out in his main phase for Neriv. We then see an Orzhov Basilica coming in, and Arja bounces a land back to his hand. Metchu doesn't pay, and plays a Vault of the Archangels. He then casts his own copy of Neriv Heart of the Storm. He swings his commander Zurgo at Max, getting the Mobilize trigger, and has the tokens also going at Max. Max declares no blocks, taking 2 from Zurgo, but also taking 2 from each of the tokens because Neriv doubles their damage. He passes after that. Max's turn has a Castle Ardenvale coming in, and he continues to be the enemy, casting Anointed Procession. He then uses 5 treasures and a Soul Ring to cast Elesh Norn that we knew he's had since his opening hand. This almost completely shuts down Mathieu and Will's decks. Going to combat, Max swings his 2 Goblins that are now 3/3s and Mathieu for 6. Will's turn has him drawing and not paying for either of the taxes. He plays a Mountain for turn, and then casts a Morbid Opportunist, which surprisingly lives. He passes to Arja after that. Arja draws, and pays to deny Max the treasure tokens, and then plays a Shambling Vents in his main phase. He then pays 2 for a Charming Prince, who immediately goes to the graveyard because of Elesh Norn's -2/-2. Arja does still get the Enter the Battlefield trigger, and picks the mode to scry 2. Will also gets to draw from the Opportunist, which he remembers later on. Arja bottoms both cards, and passes turn. Metcha pays for both taxes because his hand just loses to Elesh Norn right now. He goes to combat, but decides not to attack, and just passes to Max. Max casts the Jolly Balloon Man in his main phase, and then sacrifices a Goblin to help cast a Rottenmouth Viper. With the Rottenmouth Viper entering, each opponent has the choice of losing 4 life unless they discard or sacrifice a non-land. Each of Max's opponents decide to discard a card. Max then pays 1 to activate the Jolly Balloon Man, and targets the Viper. This prompts Will to respond, using Path to Exile, which he'd wanted to save for Elesh Norn, but he uses it on the Viper instead. Max then goes to find a land, and doesn't get to make his tokens. Going to combat, he swings his remaining Goblin token at Will, and Elesh Norn goes at Arja. Arja blocks with Neriv, but before damage, flashes in a Restoration Angel, blinking his commander to avoid her getting taken out. Will's turn has him not paying after realizing Max only has one card in hand, and he plays a swamp for turn. He then casts his version of Zurgo, and passes after it resolves. Arja draws and lets Max get the treasure token. He then uses a Bojuka Bog to exile Max's non-existent graveyard, and once that's done, casts an Essence Reliquary. Going to combat, he hits Max for 1 with the Restoration Angel. He then uses the Reliquary in his second main phase to bounce the Restoration Angel back to hand, and passes after that. Mathieu doesn't pay his taxes, don't tell the CRA, and he casts a Voice of Victory. Going to combat, he makes a deal with Will to draw him a card, and swings Zurgo at Arja, and Neriv goes at Max. Mobilize happens, and the token gets immediately taken out, which has Will drawing a card. Arja then doesn't block because Zurgo has 0 power, and Max takes the hit from Neriv. In his second main phase, Mathieu then casts a Skull Clamp, and once it resolves, gears it up onto Zurgo, and passes now that he has 1 power. Max's main phase has him casting Rabble Rousing, and he hides away one of his top 5. He then recasts Neriv, which makes 4 Goblin tokens because of the Anointed Procession being out. He then goes to combat, and swings Elesh Norn at Arja, and the Goblin at Will. When he attacks, he makes 2 human tokens, which are doubled to 4 because of Rabble Rousing. The Rabble Rousing then sees that he has 10 or more creatures, and this lets Max cast Divine Visitation from underneath it for free. Moving to blocks, Arja puts Neriv in front of Elesh Norn, and then flashes out Restoration Angel to blink it and prevent the damage. Will does something very similar, blocking with Zurgo, and then before damage, casts a Deadly Dispute, sacrificing his commander. This has him drawing 2 from the spell, and 1 from the Opportunist, plus making a treasure. This also has Arja and Max making 3 treasures, and with nothing else, Max passes. Will's turn has him paying his taxes, and he is very happy with the Deadly Dispute, as we see a Blasphemous Act hitting the stack. The board is then wiped, and Will draws a card from the Opportunist, while Mathieu draws 2 from the Skull Clamp, seeing his commander hit the graveyard. This also has Max and Arja getting treasure tokens. Will then follows up by casting Urbrask Forge, and he goes to combat, making a 1/1 Phyrexian Horror token, which he hits Max with. Arja draws for turn, and casts Necromancy in his main phase, bringing back Elesh Norn and creating a now different problem for the table. He then follows up by casting Neriv, and passes. Matt draws and plays a Marsh Flats. He basically can't play his hand still, and he casts a Bastion of Remembrance, and with the token coming out, it gets immediately taken out by Elesh Norn, and this drains his opponents for 1. Max plays his own Bojuka Bog, and exiles Arja's graveyard for revenge. He then recasts his Neriv, and this time makes 4 4/4 Angel tokens instead of the Goblins because of the Procession and Divine Visitation. He passes after that. Will draws and doesn't pay, and in his main phase casts Elspeth Stormslayer, and once she's out, down ticks the Walker to blow up Elesh Norn, hopefully for the last time. He then goes to combat, adding a counter to his Forge, and this in turn makes him 2 2/1s because of Elspeth doubling the tokens. He then swings out at Arja, and Arja blocks 1 of them, but takes 2 from the other one. Will passes after that. Arja untaps and draws, not paying for the tax. He activates the Shambling Vents, and swings it at Elspeth to take her out. This is Arja gaining 2 from its lifelink. In his second main phase, he uses the Essence Reliquary to bounce the Vents to his hand, and then replays the Shambling Vents because those are all legal game actions. Mathieu draws and feels like he's finally got a break in this game. He doesn't pay for his taxes, and plays a Mountain. 4 mana then gets him a Hero of Bladehold, and he passes after it resolves. During his end step, Max uses the Castle Ardenvale to essentially make 2 4/4 Angel tokens. Max draws and goes straight to combat. He swings 2 Angels apiece at each of his opponents, with Neriv also going at Mathieu. With Neriv attacking, Max also gets to exile his top 2 cards, because he has 2 differently named tokens. He also makes 7 human tokens from the Rabble Rousing, which are replaced and doubled to make 14 4/4 Angels. He then casts Pia Nalar, Consul of Revival, and once that's done, he casts Legion's Landing from exile. This triggers Pia's Thopter creation, but it's replaced to make him 2 4/4 Angel tokens. Max then plays a land from exile, and does it again thanks to Pia's ability. He passes after that. Will doesn't pay his taxes, and casts a Brazen Cannonade. He then casts a redoubled Storm Singer and goes to combat. This has him adding a counter onto the Forge, and he then swings the 3-1 at Max. Max blocks, and with the token being taken out, the Brazen Cannonade deals 2 to each of Will's opponents. Will then also exiles his top card to the Cannonade since he attacked in his second main phase, and he plays the Plains as his land drop before passing to Arja. Arja casts Sign in Blood in his main phase, losing 2 and drawing 2. 5 mana then gets him Aurelia the Law Above, but without being able to get through Max's massive board, Arja decides to swing Aurelia at Will. Will takes the hit for 8 because Neriv doubles the damage from Aurelia since she entered this turn, and Arja passes after combat. Mathieu has a mountain for turn, and he goes to combat. He swings the hero at Max, and layers the triggers to make the tokens first, and the pump resolves afterwards. Max blocks all 3, and before damage, Mathieu activates his Vault of the Archangels, giving his creatures lifelink and death touch. This has the blocking angels getting taken out, and Mathieu gains 7. He also drains the table for 3 with the Bastion triggers. Mathieu then plays out a Senseless Spirit, and passes, knowing that the table is pretty much done for. Max draws and goes to combat, swinging enough angels at each opponent to try and take them out. This also triggers Aurelia, which, unfortunately for Mathieu, deals the remaining life he would have from the attack, with Max taking all of his opponents out regardless of blocks and life that they'll gain, and Max wins the game. Game review time. This game was just under 39 minutes, and understandably so since there were 2 smothering ties on the field. The very obvious game changer was very impactful this game, although I'm not entirely sure I would say it's the MVP. It certainly propelled Arja and Max into the stratosphere, but I think the real MVP for this game might have been the Rabble Rousing, since it gave Max a bunch of tokens every time he attacked, and also was what got him the Divine Visitation, which turned those 1/1s into 4/4s. That quickly got out of hand, and basically solidified Max's lead into this game. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, but it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.